So I'd like to assume that you've clicked on this video because you keep up with the oil prices and you saw that the Brent was going to the moon. Or you just heard that Russia is a beneficiary of the war in Iran. I've also heard it and I was confused. What does it even mean? Who is essentially going to buy penthouses and throw their freak-offs with escort models? Not me, although I am Russian. Or else, how many more soldiers will go to the war on these new profits? I'm going to unwrap it in this video. So the other day I was watching a Russian podcast where they were covering the war in Iran, and the host said that the block of Hormuz Strait is beneficial for us. But who is us? This is quite confusing part. Maybe the podcaster identifies himself as a major stakeholder in a Russian oil company. But no, by us he meant Russians. According to the Russian constitution, natural resources of Russia indeed belong to the citizens of Russia. The catch is the following: the government does the job of managing the resources. Another catch is that in 2026 the Russian constitution matters as much as the international law. To be precise, it matters as much as a dog shit on the street, unfortunately. So the government does the job of managing the resources. From the perspective of whoever came up with this, people that manage the money will spend it on public goods rather than on throwing DD parties on some islands. Well, actually it can go both ways. From Norway and Qatar on the good way to Equatorial Guinea on the fucked up way. Where is Russia here? You might think maybe near Norway. The constitution in Russia was written at the same time the Norwegian Sovereign Fund was created. And considering that Russia was created by some Nordic aliens 1,000 years ago, then why not? Russians can do a similar thing and manage the oil money correctly. Norwegian Sovereign Fund that I've mentioned is also called the Oil Fund, and it uses the oil money to invest in companies. Russia also has a similar thing called Nation Welfare Fund. It has 10 times less money than Norwegian's fund, which is almost the same amount of money as a latest round of OpenAI has generated. And also, instead of investing in the companies, Nation Welfare Fund buys and sells foreign currencies depending on the oil price. Actually, Russia is not on this side of the spectrum, but rather in the middle. I will get back to it later in the video. 3 years ago, Josep Borrell said, Russia is just a gas station of Europe. Interesting perspective. I even asked Russians for their comments on it back then. This is a creative insult, but during the lack of energy resources, the word just is removed. Russia is a gas station of Europe. Crown emoji. Realistically speaking, hate it or love it. It's actually great to have the abundance of oil and gas, even it's in the country for which you are only the subject. So I've been to Sri Lanka recently and I learned that they don't work on Wednesdays because they don't have enough energy. And my friend got a car and she can only fuel up the car on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Because her number is even, she cannot fuel up the car on other days. That's odd, isn't it? Now I am in Vietnam and they cut off electricity randomly. A few days ago I was in a gym and they just cut off power in the middle of my session. You could imagine all this hard breathing in a dark, scary sight. So some people still stress that it's not great to have the abundance of oil and gas as it leads to authoritarianism, calling it a resource curse. The governments get most of their money from selling resources rather than from taxes. Hence, they don't give a crap about opinions of people. It's not always a bad idea. We can look at Brunei and Qatar. They give free healthcare and free education to its citizens. Most likely none of you dreamed of studying in Brunei, and I think Brunei citizens are also not a big fan of this offer. So Sultan sends its citizens to other countries to study for free. Unfortunately, the situation where a country is rich in resources but its people live in poverty is encountered far more often than the examples of Qatar and Brunei. Equatorial Guinea, this is the most extreme example. A lot of oil, dictatorship and ass conditions, briefly speaking. So in this spectrum, Russia is neither close to Equatorial Guinea nor to Brunei. Qatar and Norway. Let's put Russia in the middle. Alright, in this section I would like to tell you what exactly happens to the oil money in Russia. In Russia, bills on natural resources rent periodically arise. It means each person could be able to get some amount of money every month. But even in such a big country with so many resources, these payments wouldn't be big. So 1 year ago, a State Duma deputy representing the Communist Party introduced a bill to the State Duma to establish a social justice fund. The fund, according to the plan, will be replenished with royalties from oil exports, and the proceeds will be distributed among Russian citizens. The government promptly rejected the bill, calling it excessive. And the idea is actually not new. In Alaska, people receive money every year. But Alaska is a home for 700-something thousand people, while Russia has 200 times more people. Russia currently faces numerous challenges, like the most obvious one is figuring out what to do with the war, and also there are such problems as development of regions. I know there are a lot of people in the audience that would like to just throw a nuclear bomb on Russia to solve all these problems, but the Russian government presumably has chosen another way. So Russian citizens benefit not from dividends deposited on their cards, but from government services and social guarantees, more than a third of which are paid for by oil and gas revenues. How effectively these funds reach citizens is a matter not of the constitution, but of public administration and budget transparency. The primary mechanism for converting resource funds into public goods is through government tenders. Government tenders is basically when a government needs some job done and they publish the job and businesses apply. Sometimes businesses do a really good job with these tenders. For example, in 2015, designer Artemy Lebedev did a really good job with navigation system in Moscow. And he did it for the cheapest price. The motivation for his action was to make Moscow more beautiful. Speaking of Moscow, relaying road tiles in the city became a meme. They change it very often. There was a rumor that someone close to the mayor was profiting from these tenders. Whether that's true or not, I'm not going to claim in this video. My point is that money from oil and gas industry can be taken through these tenders. So the focus of the Russian budget in 2026 is the national defense, which is 30% of the budget. A significant portion of these funds, about 80%, is channeled through classified articles. Social policy is 17% of the budget. For 2026, Russian government was expecting to receive 500 billion USD, and it expected to lose 545 billion USD. So you see, the difference is $45 billion. They wanted to get this money from Nation Welfare Fund, and this fund has about 3 times more money than the current deficit. So Russia could have preceded the war for about 3 years at least. But now that the Hormuz Strait was blocked, Russia has 1 more year. This is what Bloomberg reports. If oil prices remain high until the end of the year, Russia's revenue from oil exports could increase by 40 billion. So the war now can be safely prolonged for 1 more year. So will a regular Russian become richer because of the block of Hormuz Strait? Actually no, because the budget has already been in deficit. But even if it wasn't in deficit, we would likely see 10 more new roads in Moscow for an unbelievably big price. So this was another episode of Only the Interesting with Daniel Orion. See you in my next video, ladies and gentlemen. Support my channel at the links in the description. Bye bye.